Hello, welcome back to the David Watson podcast. Today I spoke with Matt, also known as Nightstand Matt, and we get into many things. The fact that he is the last responder, you'll learn what that is, and his books, a prolific writer. I hope you enjoy the episode. Hello, welcome to the David Watson podcast. Thank you for listening to my rant about cars. And how are things? You good?
I'm good. I'm doing all right. Things have been better. Things have been worse. It's life.
Yeah, it is. It is. That's actually, I just wanted to quickly check in because one of the things that came up on the bio that was sent to me was how many jobs you've had.
Oh, in total, or
Yeah,
just right now?
let's go with both.
Okay, I have worked 16 or 17 different jobs. Never once fired. Uh, Cleaned dishes for a living. I served ice cream. I've worked in manufacturing. All grunt level positions. I was almost a cop at one point, but I got permanently denied for being colorblind. And right now, I've fixed computers for a school district. Actually, what I'm doing today, but I'm on lunch break. And then tomorrow, I work my second job, which I originally left to do the computer job, but went back to because I need extra money because I'm short on money. I move bodies at a hospital.
Okay.
Yeah, the joke name is the last responder, but yeah,
That's good.
but it's
If you haven't heard it before,
it's
that's
funny.
good.
Yeah, you have to have the dark humor when you work at a hospital. But like, if someone needs to get an X-ray, I'm the person they call and you take them there, or has to go to surgery, come back. You're the guy who pushes people places because the hospital I work at is massive, and we're just people who move everybody. However, on the flip side, the last responder comes from if someone dies, you gotta take them to the morgue.
Yeah.
And I mean, honestly, sometimes those are the easier jobs. The patient doesn't yell at you.
Yeah. It's funny. I mean, you're obviously okay around dead bodies. I've seen a few. I work in care, and I had to ID one of my best friends once, and
Uh,
stuff.
yeah, it's hard when you know someone in there. I've had that too.
Yeah, it's weird
Yeah,
because you just like there's something, and this is going to sound really stupid, but there's something missing, and it's just like, oh, you're not there anymore.
yeah. You have to put your mind elsewhere. You have to come up with dark jokes.
Yeah.
It's when you work in the medical field of any kind, and you just have to do those things for your own sanity. I've
I, I well, I was
yeah, when especially
I remember going to when my friend died. His best friend from school wanted to sort of go and say goodbye to him one last time, so we went down to like where he was being kept at the funeral home sort of thing, and we went in there, to have a like pay our respects. And I just remember, and he had a dark sense of humor, to be fair to him, but I was looking at him, and I was just, and you end up talking to him like he's still there, and I was just like, mate, I know you look terrible, but they've done you up like one of the worst, cheapest wax models I've ever seen. You look terrible. And he
oh
just, like you see those wax museums, and it's supposed to look like Tom Cruise, and you're just like, nah,
yeah
you needed to get a photograph of him to see what he looked like, because that's not Tom Cruise. It
oh
was just like, it's just how have they made it not look like you?
oh yeah. Well, I'm sorry for your loss.
It's it's unfortunate, but it's one of those things. Do you know what I mean? It kind of. I think
Yeah,
it was a bit of never. We had a bit of a drinking problem and stuff like that. So it's kind of. I think down the line we probably all realised it was going to happen.
yeah. When I was when I was first working at the actually it was my last like week before I came to this job. I was leaving. I was like, I'm never coming back. I'm gonna be away from the hospital. All this sadness. Guy I used to play music with. So I was like in my early 20s, and they were all in like their 60s and 70s.
Hmm.
I was jamming with these guys. I was having so much fun. Uh, they broke up. I found out that he had cancer and some other issues. But last week at the hospital, he comes in for a heart attack, and I took him to the ICU. And then, like my last day, I took his bag to the morgue. It's like a
Wow.
great to see you. I'm sorry I see you this way, and then the next day it's like ah
Yeah.
yeah. It's so when you see people you just it's hard on you, but at the same time you have to.
Yeah.
I'm here for another day.
Yeah. Well, this is because that's that weird thing. It's when you see the body, when you see that the person is dead, it's just like I said, it's really cliche and quite stupid, but that he wasn't there anymore, and there was
Yeah,
it's just like this weird puffy flesh thing that used to look
yeah,
like him before they badly did him up, and he's just like, and it was really, I don't know, it was kind of surreal, but really detached because I just
yeah,
like, oh, I can't, and it's. You look, like I said, it's different for him because I'd known him since I was like 15, and it was just like,
yeah,
but no, it's not. You're not. There was this. Yeah, you're not there. You're just not there anymore.
yeah.
You've gone. And then it was
But
just
you got
kind
the
of,
memories.
yeah, yeah. It was, there's sort of pictures of him up in the office and stuff. Um, but it was just like, yeah. So it just didn't have. If I'd have had to somebody asked me a morbid question about what do you think would happen if you had to do that, I'd think it'd be much more morbid than it was. But it wasn't. I was quite detached from it all. It's just like, oh, you know.
It's just a part of life.
I
The
think,
other end,
yeah,
really.
I think that's what it was like. That's what it was. Out of all your other jobs, from ice cream and to weapons manufacturing.
Well, I didn't know I was making stuff that went into weapons. I made a joke to my employer. It's like, yeah, everything I've made hasn't blown up yet. He goes, oh, well, it has. They go into missiles. They're called desiccators. They suck up like the moisture in the air, and then they
Okay,
go into missiles. Yeah, I won't say the name of the company
no,
because
no.
I despise the company because they would play the same playlist of music every day, nonstop, and it
Ah,
drove me to madness.
I used to. I've worked in a lot of supermarkets, and
Uh,
and they always have like a 6 month playlist.
Christmas time.
Oh, Chris, yeah, it starts. It's a weird process because even because Christmas songs were not as bad, if that makes sense, because you were expecting it. But it's like they had.
I did.
Go on.
Uh, I did a Christmas time at Home Depot, so we got the country version of it all.
Oh, nice. I've not had that.
It's the worst time.
But they went for the cheap subscription. But yeah, so
Yeah.
and yeah, the Christmas ones I never minded too much because it was kind of shorter. Do you know what I mean? It'd start in about November, it'd be over by January. But it'd be the ones in
You
between.
got
Yeah. Well, it
we
was
had it
when
in
I was
October.
working there. Oh no, I didn't get that, but I'd imagine that would have driven me mad. But it was the summer one because it would be like it only had 20 songs. And it was just
Oh,
on a loop 24 hours a day, the same 20 songs. And you'd be like, and if it
oh
was
my God. Yeah.
one where you didn't even like any of the songs, you're like, oh,
Y-
Jesus.
Yeah. I hate the song Meet Me in the Middle with a violent passion because every day at 2:20 it came on and I'd just be near my edge and I'd be losing it.
I
The
remember.
only reprieve was Ghostbusters at 10 and
So I'm
I
laughing because
remember all
that's
the
what
time.
happens. There'll be people listening to this and they'll be like, they know that because, like you say, you start learning the times.
Yep.
And it
Yeah.
comes on at the same
I
time.
left that job. Yeah, I left that job to go clean pools, and that was awesome because I could plug in my own earbuds,
Yeah.
had complete control. Downside, people have mean dogs, and I had to jump a lot of fences.
Oh wow. Just nobody
Yeah.
thinks I'll bring the dog in because there's a guy out there cleaning the pool.
Well, because they're their dog and they're friendly to them, but I'm a trespasser. I'm in their territory.
Yeah,
There
for
was
sure.
one
But
house that,
most owners should know what their dog is like.
yeah, most, not all.
I mean,
There
I've
were
had.
some houses that, huh?
Go on. No, come on.
Okay.
Well, I was
Well,
just
I've
going to
had some
say,
pools that had,
you go, you go, you go.
there's a delay here. You go first.
I was just going to say, I've had dogs all my life, and I know which ones will bite you and which one won't. That's what I said.
Well, there were some pools that had like the sweetest dogs, and I'd look forward to going over. I'm like, ah, yay, happy, good times. And then there'd be the pools where I didn't park correctly, and so they saw my car. They'd release the hounds. There's this one house in particular where I had to jump the right fence if they released the hounds on me, because there's a Doberman house next door. I had to make sure I jumped into the alley in the back, otherwise they would get me. Yeah, I don't miss that job.
Some shitty customers.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, going to my book, in my first book, all the side character names are actually my former pool customers because I couldn't come up with names. And I saw their names every day. I just used their names.
Do you
So
know,
like Salois, Burns, Myers, all pools I used to clean.
but I tell people that because that's one of the things that I learned um, when I wrote my first book. Don't 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 go overboard with names. Just think of people you actually know, and like not necessarily your inner circle, but just actually if you know somebody, know their name or just call them the car guy. Don't overthink it. You know, if it's driving you nuts, just give them any old title and deal with it later when the drafts are all done. And you know, but the best thing I used to do is just think of people from school or old jobs.
Yeah, that's actually I did that a lot for the first book. Was people I knew. It was a lot of it. You feel it being personal because a lot of it is personal.
Yeah.
Even a lot of the characters are inspired. My mother has a hard time. My mother and sister has a hard time reading the first book because they recognize the characters and who they're based off of. Like I can't. They had trouble reading it because it's too. I know who this person was, and
So
but
what
they enjoyed it.
what's the first book about then?
The first book, A Battle for Tomorrow, is the story of a character whose mind. World War III happens. Wrote it before Russia invaded Ukraine. Always point that out. But a character's mind is sent back to his younger self. And with the knowledge of what is to happen, he now has to make decisions to try to change the future. But then there's the issue of PTSD, immediately going from a war, being drafted in a war, to now he's like in his seventh grade body. And it's not an easy adjustment. So that's a lot of it. A lot of it, the first chunk of the book is just the war and how bad it gets. And then it's boom, he's back in time. Oh, I wasn't ready to come home. And just a little twist on the coming home too early genre. The second book is the consequences of changing the timeline. And book 3, ideally, will be out next month. And that is The War for the Stars.
Just when you were saying about coming back with the knowledge, but what age is seventh grade
Seventh grade,
roughly?
it's about like 13, 12 zone.
Yeah,
Yeah, about that zone, I'd say. So he's a grown man, but his mind is a grown man mind, but he's
yeah.
trapped in a child's body. And so even though he's going, hey, the world's about to end, everybody, no one's going to believe this kid. And also in 2007, when it takes place, when it gets sent back to, phones aren't regularly available. We don't have the smartphones.
Yeah.
It's still a couple kids that flip phones, so he doesn't have that extra bit of help. I thought that would add a little twist to it.
I I have a feeling that if that happened to me, I'd just I would work out what country wasn't affected by the war and go there. I don't know if I'd be doing
Well,
my patriotic duties. I'd be like, I know how to make a shitload of money before the war breaks out.
yeah,
I
there's that,
know.
but
I was going to say I know all the things that kids scared of that you don't need to be scared of. Do you know,
Yeah.
like, you know how to avoid the fights, you know how to deal with the fights, you know how to just walk up to girls and say hello. You're not scared of that anymore. You know, there's all those things, and you know how to make money. I'd be thinking, yeah,
Well,
I
remember,
know.
the character's drafted at 18, so he doesn't really have a adult life yet.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
yeah,
So he doesn't have that. And then there's the other little twist of he went from combat of fighting for his life, and now his bully is going to step up to him. It doesn't end well. It's not a switch you just turn off.
that's
There's a moment that is, yeah,
that's what I mean. Because when you've got that little bit of extra life experience, you're going to annihilate people you were once afraid of.
exactly. But then there's consequences for annihilating someone when you're that young. There's real consequences, and that's what happens to the main character. Sets him down a kind of a dark path,
Yeah,
but it's what happened if you would get into a fight as brutal as eventually depicted. It makes sense. It's an intense moment, but it was inspired by what The Way Back. Did you ever read that one, the sequel to All Quiet on the Western Front?
no, no,
I didn't know there was a sequel,
no,
so I
nor did
went
I.
off and read it. Yeah. So the guy wrote All Quiet on the Western Front, then he wrote The Way Back, which is after the war, First World War, and how hard all of his friends are at adjusting to everything. There's a whole moment where a friend gets cheated on, and rather than being an adult to talk to this guy who just wronged him, he goes straight to violence because that's all he knows. He
Mm.
went from 18 to war zone to now this. It's not a switch that you turned off. It's still on. And I thought, okay, well, let's work that into my story. And I feel as though it came out very well. Eventually, things do come ahead. I don't want to give anything
No,
too
no,
much away, but
no,
it's
no.
worth a
That
read.
that's fine. What made you start? Did you always know it was going to be a trilogy?
Actually, original plan was it to be 4 books, but things got thrown off a bit. Now it looks like it's going to be 5 books.
Okay. When did it
Because it's supposed
start?
to start writing, or the story take start.
When does the, like, what day, or if you remember, was there, like, you had this story that you always wanted to talk about, or did you always just want to write something?
Well, I had this story of what if you could start over? Like if
Yeah,
I could actually have my younger self sent back there. And I kind of worked with that a bit, but then it didn't it didn't have edge to it. It was a little boring. So it's like, and then there's always been an issue of war being on the horizon for our generations. It's always been there. Okay, well, let's add that in. Let's give the character trauma as he goes back. The plan was for the series is called The End of Earth. It's supposed to be war, famine, pestilence, and death for the four books. But the second book, things kind of got thrown into a new direction. And the whole goal was for the final book to be my sci-fi series of essentially Halo versus Star Wars. Things kind of have thrown off a bit. Like even as originally the original idea was to have zombies versus aliens in the story because that hadn't been done. I started working on this in high school. But things changed and it's becoming more of a character driven story of growing up and the
yeah,
most insanity things happening, but yet it's always focused on the individual. The earth is ending. There's always an issue. There's always a crisis out there. There's a crisis right now, but there's always still the personal story
yeah.
of what we're going through today. You're going through a car issue that could go further or maybe not. I have to go move
Ironically, I've
bodies
gone back
tomorrow.
in time. Yeah, you're moving dead bodies tomorrow.
Exactly.
Because
Hopefully
that's
no dead bodies. I've only had one body, one deceased person since I went back
okay.
to working at the hospital. But when I first started there back in 2023, COVID was still going hard,
Yeah.
and we filled the morgue on the regular. But back to the story, the books. That was the plan. I have another book that I'm going to be coming out soon.
Okay.
Called The Last Responder. It's a kind of novella, and it's the stories from the hospital mixed with modern dating. It's going to be separate. I needed something to put my mind away from the existentialism of the other books.
Yeah. It's hospitals are a funny thing. There's that meme that goes around the internet, and that says like there could be a person in one room on the same floor giving birth. Somebody's saying goodbye to someone for the last time, and then some random person with something stuck up their butt. It's just like,
Yep,
yeah, and that's a hospital in a nutshell, isn't it?
100%. You forgot there's also a guy trying to get drugs in another room
Yeah,
who has
yeah,
back pain.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And it's so it probably is an interesting place to try dating, at least chat up lines.
Yeah, and well, I started writing The Last Responder because I didn't have a good dating experience. I got used as a wallet, and
Yeah,
I was like, wow, I feel terrible. I'm going to write about this. And that's where The Last Responder came from. And ideally, that'll come out soon. I even had a local artist draw the cover, and I would show it to you, but I'm using my phone to do this.
yeah, no, that's fine. You know, but yeah, I know because things like that are good because they're very relatable, they're very connected, and
Yeah.
you know, I remember I never got around to finishing it. I wrote one book and then I never got around to finishing the others that I had ideas on. But it's the way you can mishmash ideas with real life events. When I had this idea because about 15 years ago I tore the ACL on my knee and it didn't detach, so I got away quite likely, you know. But I had to wear a brace for a while. But and even now, if I sit still for too long, you know, and when I mean too long, I mean like stuck on a plane or something like that, or you're watching a film at the cinema, and if I can't stretch my leg out, it will start to ache. And
Uh, there's a fire truck driving right past me right now.
that's random.
So,
Might have to stop.
well, no, it is strange. I'm working at a school right now. Oh, here comes an ambulance. Well, we could keep going.
Let's
Nothing
keep
I
going.
can do to help.
No, no,
So you tore your
you might
ACL
be
and you're
moving that
working on a
body
book.
tomorrow.
I think
Sorry, I'm going to be stuck on this.
maybe.
Yeah, so I tore my ACL, and what I noticed is that when I was at the cinemas, I couldn't. My leg would start to ache because I couldn't move it, I couldn't stretch it out. And when I was writing one of these like short stories ideas to see if it developed into something, I had this idea that on a first date that would happen, that the guy had a dodgy
Ooh.
knee and he'd be trapped and he'd be trying to sort of like discreetly move his leg and it would go into spasm and it would just go all over and that would be his, you know, and
This
but it was
sounds like a good little story.
but it was kind of pulled from a real life event that happened to me, but I wasn't on a date. I was just randomly in the cinema with my friend, but I suddenly noticed, like, shit, my knee, you know, like my leg, and it's going. I was like, but on a first date, because you know, it's like on a first date, you try and wing it that everything's fine, and you try not to be discreet. Whereas when you're with a mate, you don't care because you already knows when you could stand up around his fucking knee. Yeah, you wouldn't be embarrassed about anything, but. So yeah, I turned it into this whole thing, but it never developed into anything past that setting or scene. But if somebody wants to steal that, help yourself. Um,
Uh, that is a good idea. If you were to make that into something where it's just a bunch of stories of various dates, I've been to speed dating events, and you can just have that be a whole. Just every person has its own problem. Probably make that work.
that might be a
Just speed dating. Yeah,
that might be a good novella. Speed dating.
yeah.
I've never
Speed dating's rough.
I've never been. I've never done it. It doesn't interest me at all. I,
Uh,
I'm
so
single and tapped out years ago. So I can't be bothered. I'm too
I'm
interested in collecting cars.
I got you. Well, I'm 30, and I went to one that was supposed to be my age range, age 25 to 35, but everybody there was like 50, 40 to 50. I'm like, oh, this isn't going well.
That
It was
that you'd be that would be a good novella. Do you know what I mean?
it honestly, I it probably could have been a chapter in The Last Responder, but I like how I ended it,
Yeah.
and I think it's a happy. I gave it a happy ending that I needed to write. I needed a happy ending at that
I
point.
take it the guy in The Last Responder is a character, is a person.
He's he is the character in The Last Responder is heavily based off of my life and me, but I made sure that it also feels like a romance character. My uncle made this joke: make him like a one of those romantic characters just trapped in a terrible situation.
But that's why the speed dating could become its own book in itself. Do you know what I mean? The
Right.
random each chapter being the disaster of the person in front of him, and then he moves on to me. Like you could just turn it into like how many people did you have to talk to in that?
Uh, it was an odd number, so I think it was like 9. But then you had to sit alone because there's one table that didn't have the opposite. So you just it was 9, and then you just 30 minutes. No, it was like 10 minutes, or it felt like forever. You just kind of sit there
You
as
could
everybody
do a
else has
novella in
conversations.
you could do a novella in 10 chapters, just randomly making up what each experience was like, and it could become the chronicles of that guy. And you could do it for various different situations. You could imagine him if he did The Last Responder, maybe yeah. I just think because you seem to have this kind of thing going with him that
Yeah,
you can
I
imagine.
could. I maybe add more. I want to publish it and put it out there. I've I'm working on because in my mind it's done because I'm working on book 4 right now for the end of Earth
Yeah,
series and the prequel for it. So I got those going, and then I have too many series I want to write.
what I'm thinking is because you're obviously a prolific writer because you have lots of jobs and you've already written how many books and novellas? 5, 6,
No, 3. Three.
3.
I'm just starting out. I got the third book's coming out next month, and the novella of The Last Responder also probably within a month or two.
Yeah. So
So I'm not prolific yet.
no, but you must be prolific in the sense that you actually sit down and write them because you've got to edit them, draft them, and stuff like that. So
Yeah, and that's fair. The nice thing about this current job of fixing computers is I can do a little bit of writing as I work. Because if a computer, you got to reimage computers a bunch. That can take anywhere between an hour to 8 hours. And you got two options. You can either use the time to scroll on your phone, or I
yeah,
work on my book on a separate computer just to keep my mind active.
yeah. I've had a couple of jobs like that where they're like, well, this task is going to like so. I predominantly I work in care work, but there's been times
Right.
where it's just like, oh right, so and so is going to do this. Well, you've got nothing to do now for 3 hours. It's considered downtime because you just actually have to be there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if something happens, you can okay, no, I'm here. I'll do all that. Well, you can just sit down and just be productive. And
Yeah. Those jobs are nice. However, the other nice thing about moving bodies is you get paid 8 hours to work out.
that's true. That's true.
Yeah. Because those beds weigh 200 pounds. Patients are oftentimes heavy. And whoever designed the hospital I work at put hills in it. So yeah.
But
Why? Why? I don't know why, but they did.
that would be the great for your last responder. That'd be a great tagline. The best thing about moving bodies is
You can work out. And it's just be a good tag if you want to go be a medical transporter. You get paid to work out.
That
anyone
that
who's listening and thinking about going in that direction for work.
that should be the opening line to the speed dating chat line. You could join it almost, but tell when she says, "Oh, tell me about yourself." Well, the best thing about moving bodies is,
Yeah. Guys, there ain't much else better about the job.
but that
Job's not that good.
and each time he does like goes through the 9 or 10 women, he could come up with a new ailment from a patient that day and what it means. Do you know what I mean?
Uh, see, they don't always tell me what's wrong with the patient when I go to pick them up. I usually just have age, weight, and that's it. Sometimes they warn you if they're a violence risk. Sometimes, but for the most part, you're walking in on an unknown situation, and it's just a guess. It's a mystery box. Oh, is
Did
this
you,
patient going to be able to walk?
yeah.
Mhm.
Did you ever get like the handcuffed ones?
Yes, those are the violence risk guys. Or you get prisoners who come in who need to get X-rayed
Yeah,
or like a MRI. You get them, but they're always with like a cop or a sheriff's deputy, sometimes border patrol. But it sometimes you don't know they're a violence risk until you see they're strapped to the bed. You're like, oh, I'm supposed to move them into a stretcher, and they're strapped to the bed. And then you see the nurse has a black eye. And I'm like, oh, this is gonna be a fun day.
see, there's a whole load of stories. You've got to do that with speed date and turn each of these little things into a chapter where you try and explain. You try and flirt with,
I did,
yeah, you know,
yeah, I did kind of do that in the last responder. There are various. There's a whole chunk where he's just going and working the hospital, and it's like, oh, this is this problem that we're dealing with. Oh, bugs, get ready. But bugs are. You will see a nurse go right into like, oh, they got COVID, whatever. But they got bed bugs. No one wants to go in that room.
no, no, big buds.
No, that's a bad day.
Yeah. So, do you ever, when you see them like, and they're handcuffed because they're prisoners or something, do they ever talk? Do you ever get them like they're really,
Oh yeah,
yeah, they're really
yeah.
chatty?
Sometimes like there's an old biker guy. He had big, long, white beard. He was diabetic, so he had a leg amputated, and they brought him in on this weird, not wheelchair that was foldable. It was like green plastic. And he was like this really chill guy. I wish I could have. Sometimes the nurses in the back will try to look up what the person did,
Yeah,
but he was just this chill guy. He was just talking about life. And I think he was like 60 or 70. So he'd been in for a while. Here in Tucson, there's a prison, but no one gets sentenced to that prison here for longer than 10 years. That's the max.
yeah,
If you're more like serious crimes, you end up in Florence.
okay,
That's like that's where they that's where you can get the death penalty out there if you're sent that way, or you're just permanent forever. But Tucson, the max is 10 years, and then the jail is 1 year before sentencing. I I was almost a cop, so I have a degree in criminal justice. I know a good amount of the
yeah.
crime stuff around here.
But that's the thing about the hospital, isn't it? You meet everybody and anybody. It's all sorts.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You'll meet some of the nicest people and some of the meanest people, and the meanest people will tend to be nurses. And you understand why they're angry.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're angry because they're working a rough job, and you just happen to be standing there after they just dealt with an insane patient. Now you get the anger that they couldn't yell at them, and all right, this is today.
yeah.
I'll just stand here and smile.
So,
Faces underneath the mask I have to wear.
yeah, that. But that's the thing, though, isn't it? When you it's effectively like you were saying, you and we're all in the same boat. I have two jobs as well. It's just they both happen to be in care, so it's kind of familiar
What
territory.
jobs do you do right now?
So I've been working for about 16, 17 years with head injuries rehabilitation,
Oh,
but I've been with the two main clients I have. I've been with for 11, 12 years now. But I used to do
That's a good amount of time.
ton of different guys. Same as you, I used to have a resume of like, does this guy stay anywhere for longer than a few months? And yeah, and I went back to college trained to be a tree surgeon. Didn't like that. A couple of years ago, I qualified as a hypnotherapist. Still do a bit of that part time. But again, it just when I do podcasts as well, and I do, it's like you just throw your hat at things and see what sticks. And
Yeah.
one day, well, something will happen. Something will develop.
Yeah. Well, hopefully my books sell and I don't have to work 2 jobs anymore.
But
We'll see.
that's it. It's one of those sort of strange things. Is when you look at the history of authors and how many authors wrote 3, 4, 5 books before one took off, and then once that one got traction, people went back to see what the catalogue of work was.
Didn't George R. R. Martin not publish Game of Thrones? That was like his 5th book series or something.
Yeah.
I don't know the exact number. I haven't read it because
But
I refuse to read Game of Thrones.
I've never watched it or read it. So
It was good. It was not anymore.
My thing about I'm not too clever with TV series. I've got a lot better. But at some point in my life, I realised that. So I love films, and I realised the reason I like films is because they finish.
Yeah.
And I'm not a fan of sequels because I realised with most sequels, they were never part of the original plan, which is why they're never as good. But if it was part of the original plan, well, it's not a sequel, then it's just a series of the original film. Kill Bill is a good example. It was always meant to be a couple of films. That's why they're,
It's true.
But if something does really well and then like, oh, wow, we can do something off the back of this success, it never has the same feel because it was never part of the original idea of whoever wrote it.
I'll say, though, Terminator 1 and 2, though, are pretty solid.
I'd agree with that completely.
And then ignore 3. We ignore 3 and all the rest.
But all the rest of a good idea. It's like kind of validates what I'm saying.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But the caveat I'll put into that is also the time between the two of them. Because
what was the time?
Terminator 1 and Terminator 2 was quite a significant amount of time between the two of them, I think, in terms of sequel.
Yeah. How? Because it's like 80s and then 91.
So the original was 1984.
Okay. Yeah, that's a decent amount of time.
Terminator 2 was 1991.
Okay. Yeah, it's a decent amount of time. But I like to always think about those two in particular is it shows the true difference between action and horror. Because in a horror movie, it's all based upon how prepared your protagonist is for the monster.
Yeah.
In Terminator 1, they're not prepared. It's terrifying. It's an unstoppable force. Terminator 2, they're prepared for the monster, and it's action.
And it's one of the things I think it works really well is because there's this massive distance in time. Nobody thought this is a brilliant film. Let's just make another one. We'll make up a story. You can tell somebody's gone back and said, kind of thought about it and said, I wonder what would happen if an updated Terminator come back. And we sent the original.
James Cameron both times.
Yeah, but there's like almost a decade of thought that's gone into that story that's allowed it to happen. And it becomes then its own story. And, like Sarah Connor goes off and trains. And the timeline almost matches with the age of the son. It's only a few years out because he's 14 in the film or something. 14, 15.
Yeah, it's a good. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
It's one of the reasons Maverick did so well after Top Gun. But it actually didn't change his age. It's like, no, he is nearly a retired guy now. So let's do a film about him now, about the guy who's basically holding on to his wings for dear life. And he's about to retire and get kicked out of the Air Force anyway. It's actually one of the reasons it works so well because, you've been in for nearly 40 years.
Yeah. I'll say one of my other favorite series is the Alien franchise.
Yeah,
But I only choose to exist that two of them exist. One, Alien and Aliens,
yeah.
because I couldn't even get through three. But those worked well because again, they went from horror to action. They made it
Hmm.
a war movie in the sequel. And was yeah, and again, James Cameron involved, so he knows
Yeah.
how to make good action. I think that, but then they just keep making more and more aliens that I checked out after a while.
The last one I went and watched, I think it was the one with, is it Michael Fassbender in it?
Oh, Prometheus.
Yeah,
That was
and
Michael Fassbender. Promethean and Prometheus 2.
I was watching that.
Alien Covenant.
Yeah, with the
They did a
one.
lot.
Well, I was in the cinema with my friend Emma. We used to go and watch films just constantly, and we were literally, the film hadn't been on long, and I just looked at her and said, "This is shit." And she's like, What do you mean?" And it was because when the captain woke up, when the ship was going through, he woke up, and we've got this signal from somewhere, blah blah blah. We have to go and check it. I was like, "There's no captain, space captain, in the entirety of history that would have done that." Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's like, no, we have a paid mission. We have an
yeah,
unsubstantiated signal. We're not going to go and do that. It's just the whole plot was just like, this is awful. They just
let's
wouldn't
make
have
our
done.
characters dumb for the sake of the plot. It's No
Yeah.
one likes those.
Whereas any exhibition where we're going out doing what they were doing, the leader, the guy that would have been in charge of that mission, would have never deviated that for a signal they couldn't quantify. And even if they could, they'd have just sent instructions back to the next person. They'd have just like,
Yeah,
no,
that would have
we're
made
yeah, and like you said, just like, oh, we're going to do this, but we need to justify this instead of.
yeah,
It's like, no, that's not. It's not even a plot. It just isn't.
yeah. Well, that's actually what made me want to start writing my series was because I had it was when they were releasing the new Star Wars, and I love Star Wars,
Mm.
but I'm watching this like this isn't that good. I'm just gonna go make my own sci-fi series. That was kind of the catalyst.
One of the spin-offs I liked, I think it was the Rogue One, where it was kind of like would have
One
been
was
prequel. But again, I think the reason that worked is because they actually tied it up with, because in the original 77 Star Wars, the
yeah,
theme of it is people died to get these plans of the Death Star. So they actually just filmed the mission of the people that died getting the plans. So the story
yeah,
had kind of already been told. And again,
yeah,
it finished. There couldn't be a spin off because you see them all get blown up on the planet.
yeah. Well, I will say, have you seen Andor?
Which one's Andor?
So actually, so that's one of the characters from Rogue One. He's the Hispanic guy. It's his story leading up to Rogue One, and it's actually pretty good. It's a series that they did, and it's because you. How do I describe it?
Is that the one
It's
where they. I think I have
is
seen
it
that.
with the prison break?
Yeah. Because they're in the prison. It's got the electric floor.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah. I have seen that. And
It's
they
pretty
work
solid.
like slaves, but they all think they're working their time off, and it turns out they discover that you're not working your time off. You're
Yeah.
never going
And
to
then
be
there's the
released.
yeah, and then there's the heist before that was super intense.
Yeah,
And it's okay, well, how do we fund the rebels? Well, we have to steal from the Empire. It
yeah.
had world building, it had purpose. And I enjoyed it. And at the very end, when you see all the parts they were making were actually going to the Death Star, it's like a raising of the guillotine that you know is going to hit your protagonist, but it's
Mm.
like, oh crap. I thought that was well done.
No, I'd agree.
I thought that was worth.
I'd
But
agree.
I didn't the sequel trilogy I didn't enjoy.
No, no, and it's this where they just. I kind of understand it because it's a business. It's whichever way.
It,
It's a commercial business. It's a revenue, but they kind of just
but
make films for the sake of we can cash in. And it's like
yeah,
literally, how do we bleed the last uh, drop of blood out of a cash cow?
Well, they got all the blood. They haven't. The last several series they've made have made so little money. So
Yeah,
they got the money. It's over.
yeah,
It's sad, which is what also pushed me to just, I'm going to tell my own sci-fi series. I want to,
yeah.
if they're not going to take care of this, I'm going to make my own thing and enjoy it. And that's what inspired the End of Earth series. I almost wish I had a different title for it because it kind of means I have to have a certain ending eventually, but it just works for what I end up doing, I think.
Why does it have to have a different title?
Well, if I had a different title, I wouldn't have the series is called The End of Earth.
Yeah,
So eventually Earth has to end in this series.
only has to
But
end from his perception, then, don't it? Because he's effectively a time traveler.
yeah, that's true. But I do switch protag it's always told from a first person point of view. But in each book, it's almost the first book is all this character's Jason. Second book, we follow a different person. And third book, we go back to Jason. So you do switch point of views to
What
see.
happens if literally the last, like, say, the twist at the end of the fifth book is that everybody else has been trying to approach it the wrong way because they feared it was the end of Earth. It's not. It's just the beginning.
Hmm, that might be an interesting path to take. I have not. I've had the ending kind of set that it almost been working backwards to tell the ending,
Yeah.
but that's not a bad idea actually. I haven't written that book yet. This current one,
You
this
know how
current
you
one was
often get those flips in books and films where the problem is they're always seeing it in one direction.
yeah,
And it's like,
yeah,
well, we're trying to stop the end of Earth. What if actually
yeah,
we need to let it happen because it's the beginning?
yeah. That's not a bad idea. I think I might steal some ideas from you now.
It's your idea. It's yours to take. I mean, it's just because because like you say, at the end of Earth. Well, what if it's? Because it could just be a line. What if it's not the end of Earth? It's the beginning.
All right.
And
I think I like that.
the protagonist, instead of acting out of fear of something going to finish, he has the courage because something's going to begin.
I'm now gears are turning in my head. I'm thinking now. All right, all right. Well, I still have two more books to write before I have yeah, two more books to write before I can get to that one. So
Yeah,
work.
but you know what I mean. You can see that there's a timeline now with different protagonists because
Yeah,
one of some of the great things that you see is the person that realizes all of the other people's mistakes, and it was always something. Ah, right. Do you know, like I'm going to run with this because it's the simplest thing in my head. It's like just go with the idea. You ever seen Kung Fu Panda?
I have. I
Right.
have.
And in the first Kung Fu Panda, the secret to the power of the scroll is it's a mirror. And it's the
Yeah.
thing that
It's in
if you
you all
couldn't,
along.
yeah, if you can't master the simple fact that it's you, you'll never be a master. And the thing that his master could never figure out was the secret dragon power, whatever is, it's just you. It's so simple. It's just you. And
Yeah.
it's kind of like there's that thing like I've got to stop the earth from ending. I've got to stop the earth from ending. I've got to stop. I've got to stop. I've got to stop. I've got to stop. And actually, isn't that what changed in the Terminators when they realised you can't just keep going back in time to kill? And that is going
I,
to happen. So you just have to figure out how to win it and not stop it. Isn't that kind
yeah.
of what?
I think that's what if they were smart, they could have done that, but I think they keep just wanting to retell the same story with
Yeah,
Terminator
yeah, yeah.
because the first it's yeah, they keep doing that. But that would have been a good way to end the series
Mm.
if they but again, we're talking Hollywood here and they just want to make money.
Yeah, because I felt the last one that I saw, which was when Arnold Schwarzenegger came back into it, but he plays a much older Terminator, and he's
Oh yeah, was
somehow
that
married, and they're
right?
like,
I
how does? And they even add like ask, well, how does that work? because you can't have sex because you don't have any organs. And he's like, yeah, but we don't have a physical relationship. We just married out of love. And it's like, what the fuck?
I didn't. I didn't watch it.
You didn't. I
I,
promise you, don't. It's time in your life you won't get back.
the last Terminator I saw was Salvation when they actually had the full on. It's taking place in the cyber war,
Is that with
and I
Christian
was
Bale?
yeah, it's the one with Christian Bale. I was disappointed because why are you making a PG-13 R movie in a R-rated franchise? That was my whole thought process. Like this should have been more intense, grittier. This should have been the story right before the time travel.
Yeah.
But I'm not a Hollywood writer. I'm a
Not yet.
novelist. Not yet. I mean, I would like to turn my books into screenplays someday, but we'll see. We'll see what Hollywood's doing eventually.
Yeah.
They seem to be having issues.
Yeah. That's a word you could use to describe it. Issues.
That's a good word. It's a solid word.
I think there's going to be. Here's where I get confused with it all, and because I filmmaking traditionally has just been how do I get the next blockbuster? That's
Yeah.
Hollywood in a nutshell. And actors occasionally would be like, because I've made so much money, I'm going to go and do a film for a friend as a favor because they can't really afford to pay me. And that occasionally would, bring out an independent film that might be fairly good or whatever, you know. But it kind of relied on blockbusters to generate the machine to keep everything else
Yeah.
moving, you know.
Yeah. The way they financed the Lord of the Rings series was through the Austin Power movies because Austin Power movies were cheap and they made a lot of money, and that's how they financed the Lord of the Rings series, which is like that trilogy is perfect
and this
and
is
expensive.
and yeah, very. And because this is the thing that I don't understand. They know the formula. Well, I do have a theory. I do have a theory. And this is going to take a leap of imagination. Have you, there was, it was probably about 10 or 15 years ago in the UK, there was this kind of rejuvenation of craft beer. And people started, pubs, bars started promoting local ales and beers again. And the problem is, it went from the reason commercial stuff worked is because it has a palatable taste across the board. But now we've got to a stage where people have like, if you can you got to use your palate and understand the taste and what was the incentive. And you're like, no, it just tastes like a puddle of piss on a bad rainy day. There's nothing else. It just tastes like you've dug this up. And they're like, no, let it accentuate on your palate. And you're like, no, because what's happened is all the hobbyists have got more and more and more intense, and they're all trying to discover more and more flavors and more flavors. And it's moved it further and further away from the commercialization where it's palatable for everybody. And occasionally, and that's films. There's a way to make a film that's palatable everywhere to everybody within a genre. John Wick is the perfect example. It doesn't matter which John Wick you watch. You know what he's going to do. He's going to have the most ridiculous fight scenes in the world. Just like, but what we're going to do, because there's no sex scenes, right? But what we're going to do is he's going to shoot lots of people. He's somehow going to beat up people and he's going to have more injuries than an A&E. But as long as he takes a few tablets, he's fine. And somehow we're going to intertwine a side story about a dog. And in the last John Wick, the dog was the protagonist that helped him and the other guy. I can't shoot John Wick because John Wick's the bad guy, good guy. But it works, and people like me will watch the next John Wick when apparently somehow they're going to resurrect him. But the formula worked. We're going to shoot people. Yeah. We're going to put in muscle cars, and there's going to be a cute dog, and just going to be lots of loud bangs and some weird secret underground network that's in plain sight that controls the world. And we're not gonna complicate it, we're just gonna call it the table. All right. Okay. And
Keep it simple.
yeah. So and that franchise now has been running probably for nearly a decade. And
Yeah, at
Hollywood
least.
is trying to be sensitive and inclusive and I don't mean it as a pun, but nobody is buying it because the
Yeah.
rest of us don't think like that. The rest of us, when I go and see, I don't go and see a John Wick film because I want to contemplate the opinions of the world. I go because
It's an escape.
yeah, just absolute. It's fantasy, and
Yeah.
there's little to no CGI in it. And
Yeah, it's great. They Hollywood has stepped away from being the escape from our lives and like just trying to modern day us with current problems.
yeah,
And that's not why we're there.
I,
I don't want to pay a bunch of money to be yelled at for an hour and a half.
no, I don't need somebody to tell me why. Apparently, even though I've never met you, even though I'm not from your country, even though I don't even know what your politics are, apparently I'm a piece of shit because of
Yeah,
what? Because I work 60 hours a week to keep a roof over my head. That makes
yeah,
me appear, like you've got you're writing books, you're working two jobs, but somehow you're the problem with the planet. Oh, right, okay, but
yeah. It's again, if I want to get yelled at, I'll just go to work. I get yelled at the hospital when I'm there. I don't. If I'm watching a movie, I want just to escape these problems for just an hour and a half. I will deal with it afterwards. Just give me that escape. And what I tried to do a little bit was a bit of a warning for the first story, but it's also a bit of an escape of this thriller of like, oh, how would you live if you got a chance to start over like that?
yeah.
Be that escape for a little bit.
So
But that, yeah,
flipping that around, how would you live if you could? There's no pending war. If you could go back to being seventh grade, is
if
there a
I got that, I would have made a lot of different choices. I would have definitely of. I would not. I wouldn't be struggling as much right now. But then you'd have to, monetarily speaking, I would have started writing the book sooner. There would have been some changes. I'll say that much.
Hmm.
There would have been definitely some changes, but everything that led up to me being me
Oh yeah,
now,
yeah. Well, that's
it's
always the Achilles heel of every time
yeah.
travel. Every ability
I'm
to go
kind of
back.
happy with.
Yeah,
I'm happy with the person I am now, and robbing myself of those experiences with other friends to avoid certain heartache would somewhat cheapen it a bit
yeah.
in a way.
I don't know how I would deal with the heartache because there's something about it's really difficult to explain to people because they suck.
Yeah.
But the, I think the only thing you could take from the heartache is because you know it's going to happen. You wouldn't. I don't know. I'm stuck.
It's still going to hurt. Certain heartbreaks are still going to hurt no matter what you do, but
But I think it's
that's
the
also
knowing you're going to get over them.
yeah, it's still going to hurt, but that's also about being human, and life is having those heartaches and getting a chance to yeah, move to the next day.
Yeah,
Brace the sunrise.
yeah. It's a tricky one.
Yeah.
It's a tricky one.
It is a tricky one.
I don't know what I'd do about it because if you've got the knowledge and you know what's coming, I don't think I'd not have the relationships. But it's would I ever be because you know it's going to finish because those ones that are really high are because you think this is the one that's going to be we're going to be growing old together.
Yeah.
These are the ones that you think you have a future with, and when you know you don't, because here's the dilemma: because you know you don't, you can't possibly invest in the same way. But is that
Yeah.
actually why they might work, and you end up staying with them?
It's the crux of time travel. But then if you go too far back, you might miss the opportunity to meet that person too. You might rob yourself entirely because you completely changed your path. That could happen too, might be even more of a tragedy.
The flip side is you inevitably would be more confident, and
without a doubt,
and that inevitably might make you go after somebody completely different.
It might. Probably things would be different.
Yeah.
I'd probably get my ass kicked more without realizing it.
That'd be the funny one, wouldn't it? It's like, because you'd have a lot more confidence about how to deal with certain situations. But just lastly, to finish up, and this is going to actually stick with the theme, because I like to ask this question at the end of every podcast, using your imagination, which is pretty good. And if you could go back in time, which is always the question, where would you go? Why? What car would you use as transport? Because I like the car to be a time machine. And what would you be listening to on the radio?
Oh, easily. I think for traveling back in time, it depends if I just want to see something or if I want to experience it.
Entirely your choice.
Entirely my choice. I would like to witness. I'd like to witness one of Metallica's first concerts when they had Cliff Burton. I would go back in a muscle car, and I would witness them when they still had Cliff Burton. I'd like to see, because we've already talked about changing life. I want to go see something awesome. I want to go see that. Front row when they're their first big show. I would like to have done that. I'll say that. And you know what? I can't say my car because my car wouldn't exist. I can't drive stick. So it'd have to be an automatic.
Okay.
And but I don't think there were automatics back in the 80s.
Yeah, they did.
Oh, they did. They did. Yeah. I'd want to, just show up in, I would say no, I know the car. My friend had a Volkswagen Bug that we called the Adventure Bug. I think it was 68. And that car, we went on some adventure. Take the Adventure Bug to go see a Metallica concert. I'd even take my friend with me. He enjoyed Metallica. We'd go see that in his Adventure Bug because it would be an adventure.
Would you be listening to Metallica en route? Get yourself up.
Oh, yeah. We're listening to Master of Puppets on the way in before they wrote Master of Puppets.
And that is the beauty of time travel. So just quickly then to finish, where can people find you, and what are the books?
So you can find all the books on Amazon. Buying them there will help the algorithm to help me sell more, because that's how Amazon works.
It does. They
should be also available everywhere in general, because the publishing through Ingram Spark puts them everywhere online. There's The End of Earth. First book is A Battle for Tomorrow. Second book is Family Obligations. And book 3, War for the Stars, I promise will be out next month. And then you can also find me on my website at nightstandmatt.com, where you can listen to my music by Nightstand Matt. I just released a new song dedicated to my apartment neighbors called Break Up Already. Fun music video on YouTube. Or you can find my metal band, The Ruin. We just released a song called Cut the Ghost. And I'm Nightstand Matt on most social medias.
That's brilliant. Matt, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. You have a good day, man.
And you. Take care.
You too.
And there you go. That was Matt, Nightstand Matt, the last responder. And amongst other things, clearly an incredibly talented guy and a prolific writer. Do check out the links to his book. Check out the links to his band. Will all be in the description. I hope you enjoyed the episode. And as always, wherever you're from, whatever you believe, please do take care and be blessed. Thank you.